Hello, and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today, I have Jared Hamilton back on, and I can't help but bring Jared back on again because there is no one that I know that speaks so well around self sabotage as him. And there was one of my friends listened to something from Jared, and she never really made the connection between how her self sabotage with her progress in health and fitness was actually tied to what was going on around her. It had nothing to do with food, had nothing to do with exercise. It was the stress around her work, it was the pressure in her lifestyle, it was things unrelated that actually was leaking into her ability to show up for herself in the things that matter most for her health and fitness. So, with that, I'm going to let Jared start off this whole conversation on why the first phase of your journey with a coach should not be about how much progress you see or how much weight you lose physically, but it should be about building a foundation. There is so much more to coaching. There is so much more to a nutritionist than just the food itself, than just macros, than just losing weight. So, with that, here's Jared, and I will let him introduce the podcast and himself through that very important element.
What's up, Ruby? Appreciate you having me on again. Was this three times, I think.
Yep.
There we go. I love it. I love coming on here. So I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to talk to you. So my thing is with this stuff is with from the foundational standpoint is everything is always delayed. Like I compare it to business. So one of my mentors talks about like in the world of business is like everyone wants to focus on like revenue. Everyone wants to focus on like they open a business. They're like, I want to make money now. But the problem is when you aren't making money, it's like it's the most lagging indicator. You have to do all the things first, then you don't make the money till way later on. It's no different here. So as soon as you start and your biggest focus is how much fat can I lose now? How much progress can I make right now? The problem is that's the most lagging indicator. Right. Like at the end of the day, I did a piece of content years ago called the gestation period of fat loss. And his game takes a long time. This is why one of the things that we tell our clients in the very beginning of coaching with us is measure each day based off of the seed. I'm sorry, we say do not measure each day off the harvest you reap, but the seeds you plant. Because if you think about it in terms of like plants and crops or flowers or whatever the case is, when it comes to this game, that's what you're doing. Your actions and your consistency and your habits, mental, emotional, physical, whatever it may be, are seeds. But the thing is, in the world of transformation, everyone doesn't want to plant seeds. Everyone wants the harvest. Everyone wants the results. But the thing is, imagine if I like go to plant a garden and I'm like, all right, week one, I'm gonna have all my stuff. I'm gonna have all the vegetables. I'm gonna have all the flowers. I'm gonna have all the things. Well, I'm gonna be let down because I have to plant the seeds first. Then I have to take care of the seeds. Then I have to like weed the garden. Then I have to give the gestation time long enough to process. I have to give the whole journey long enough to actually let the thing happen. I have to give it days and days and months on the way the system goes, and then only after that then the plants will come through, the garden will come up. It's no different here in your journey. We see so many people who will say, oh, it's been like a whole week and I haven't made progress. It's been a whole month and I haven't made progress. But at the end of the day, it's too early. There's a gestation period to this thing, which is why we need to focus on your foundational pieces, like your overall habits, your headspace, your mindset, your psychology, but also realize that progress is the most lagging indicator. Your results right now are predicated on the last like year of your life, not the last 12 days of your life, more like the last 12 months. So that's why at the end of the day, if you want to change your results now, just assume you're going to have to get your shit together for the next 6, 8, 12 months. Then we can expect progress, not right out the gate.
I would also say that it's not just the seeds, but it's the environment you create and
Mm-hmm.
upkeep. Because a lot of the time we let these weeds filter their way in, which is what you could refer to as the self-sabotage, the all or nothing mindset around food, tracking food, social events that end up creeping in. So how would you say is best to level up our gardening skills to create this environment to keep the weeds out? And I guess how can you build that ability to withstand the different weather, like the storms, the rains, to because sometimes we might not be able to tend to our garden because it's so stormy outside, which is what you we can kind of allude to as progress is a lagging indicator, so we have to accept that. So how can we build up our ability to accept that and still keep the right quality, because there's all different types of motivation, the right quality of motivation to start to build that more intrinsic motivation while we're still waiting for these lagging indicators?
I think it's two pieces. I think it's one, being proactive, not reactive. It's you know exactly what's going to happen, but then there's the anticipation side of it where you're being proactive. So in the world of fat loss, it's knowing what's going to happen, the holidays, the sabotage is going to set in, the things like that, but then also knowing what is going to happen. So for example, like if in the gardening analogy, if we're going to stay along those lines, as soon as I plant the garden, I know the weeds are going to grow. I'm not going to be surprised when the weeds grow. So I'm going to be proactive on it and handle it as soon as they come up. I'm not going to wait till a forest is in my garden and my plants are all ruined and go, oh, how'd this happen? So in the world of transformation or fat loss, it's the same thing here. Well, if you know the past 17 times you've tried to diet, you've whipped out your all or nothing card, you sabotaged with the same three reasons, you lost motivation, you got busy, life got in the way. If you have this track record, you know exactly what's going to happen. Now you can anticipate and be proactive in your actions and stopping it. This is why you have to make sure those you're good to go on both of those. So when the way that we teach clients in my neck of the woods is, for example, we play the what I call the if this that we play the if this then what game. So basically, what that means is in the world of sabotage, it's pattern driven. So my question is, cool, what always happens? The last 15 times you've tried to lose weight, because most people that I talk to have been they're lifelong dieters. So my question is, what happened the last 15 times you've tried to lose weight? You're probably going to find the common denominator of like 3 to 5 things that happen every single time. About 3 months in, you lose motivation, or the scale spikes and you binge, or you get busy, quit prioritizing you, then one thing leads to another, you fall off and gain everything back. Well, cool. Now you have a pattern that's going to happen over and over again until you stop the pattern. So now once you say, well, these are the top 5 things that happen, now you can create scenarios and plans on every single one. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. If this happens, this is what I'm going to do. So this way you're not waiting until the event happens to then try to scramble and get your shit together. You're like weeks ahead going, okay, as soon as I start to get busy, this is what I'm going to do. As soon as this starts to happen and I start to lose motivation, this is what I'm going to do. But then that's the proactive part, because this takes a lot of ownership, a lot of bandwidth, and a lot of you being so aware what's going to happen that you're executing and you're not letting yourself fail this time.
A lot of the time, we aren't even aware of when the self sabotage is coming in, though. We just realize it after the fact, and we keep facing the battles. I think most of the time it's because we don't allow ourselves to sit with the emotions to figure out what the hell they actually are. We just know that we just like most people, I would say, even including myself, because it's such a human trait, we don't really have many tools for emotional regulation. So then it starts to come to a head, but we don't even know what those emotions are. We're just so used to going through that autopilot of this is what I tend to. So, for example, because I had this recent conversation, emotions around food. We can feel that all of a sudden they're coming to a head. It also comes to a head more so, like you said, when we're already making progress. It's things are going really well, and then we're used to rewarding ourselves with food. We we just say that we're having these feelings, but we don't really know what they are. Just like when someone says, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, we don't actually allow ourselves to dig down into that. So how can you give tools to the people listening to this to understand their emotions more, to step back a little bit more? And I I guess also a lot of people are trying to avoid something. I'm trying to avoid feeling negative, to stop focusing on the negative things. But isn't that in essence still focusing on the negative things because you're trying not to focus on them? What would be a better alternative?
I mean, at the end of the day, you just like to simplify all of this is number one, we have to become consciously aware of these things. We cannot fix something if we're when we're on autopilot and don't realize it's happening. That's why sabotage always sneaks in, is because we aren't aware it's happening. So the game's an awareness game. But to answer your question on what do we do with these emotions, is like most people are making it overcomplicated. You just hold space for them. You just be with them. Don't judge them. Don't make it about the why behind it. It's hold space for it. A really kind of gross example is we all do this really well with going to the bathroom, because when we all have the desire to go to the, let's say you have to pee. I know it's a gross example, but it works every time. When you have to pee, you don't judge it. You don't make meanings out of it. You go, oh, what's in needs to come out. And you literally go to the bathroom, hold space, don't judge it. What's in comes out. You flush it down the toilet and you go on with your day. And because here's the thing though, we know that's a regular process of being a human. We drink things, we eat things all day, which means we're going to have to use the restroom. It's a very normal biological process. But when it's the game of emotions, we think something's wrong with us. When we feel sad, we're like, oh no, something's wrong. Or we feel anxiety, go, oh, I shouldn't have this. Or we feel these, what we label as negative emotions, and we assume like it's not supposed to be here. We're supposed to feel all the emotions and not run from them or hide from them. What would happen if I had to go to the restroom and I go, oh, I don't want to feel this, and I go distract myself with food? Well, it's good. You're only gonna be able to do that for so long, and then you're gonna piss yourself, because you can't run from that very long. It's no different with your emotions. It's why when people hide their emotions with food, hide their emotions with working out, hide their emotions with their kids, hide their emotion with their productivity, hide their emotions with cleaning their house, whatever it may be. The problem is you can only run from these emotions for very long before you bust, before you cause problems and things manifest in the, whether it be in your weight loss because you emotionally ate, or whether it be like you blow up on your spouse, or whatever the case may be. But the problem is we need to treat it like going to the bathroom. You expect it's going to happen. It's a normal process of living a normal day in the life in the human condition. And then we just need to hold space and not judge it. Like even when people do emotional work, and this is something I've been guilty of, where we would make it not about the emotion, we make it about the thing we're emotional about. Case in point, if let's say I got upset from a conversation I had at work. Let's say my boss, I'll say you're at work and your boss says something mean to you and you're really, really upset about it. Instead of just being like, all right, I'm upset. That's it. Because if I just say I'm upset, what's it about? It's about the emotion of being upset. That's it. But if I go, I'm upset because my boss is an asshole. I can't believe he said this. Well, now I'm denying my emotions and making it about my boss. It's not about me anymore. So it's a level of suppression and avoidance again. Versus how about we just remove the qualifier of because my boss said this? It's no, I'm upset. I'm just going to be with the emotion of upset. I'm just going to allow myself to feel upset in my own body. And then ironically, the feeling of upset starts to dissipate because you're holding space for it. Or you journal about like, I feel upset. It's okay for me to feel upset, whatever the case may be. But you can do this for upset, angry, lonely, anxious, overwhelmed, whatever it may be. But we need to just hold space for it and quit acting like it's something strange. I think it was Mel Robbins who compared it to this stuff to the dryer lint in our washer dryer. She said it's impossible to go through a laundry cycle without creating dryer lint. That's why there's a lint trap, is because you empty it and you throw it away. Said so but it's impossible. It's equally impossible to go through a day in the life of all of us without creating mental and emotional lint. So the problem is we're not very proactive with cleaning out our mental lint trap, holding space for these emotions, journaling, meditating, therapy, these kind of things. But what happens if you have your dryer and you don't empty the lint trap? You're eventually going to burn your house down because it's flammable and it's a big danger and it can cause the dryer to quit working. But if you just empty the dryer lint every time, you're good. But no one empties their mental dryer, their mental lint trap, and then they wonder why their mental house burns down.
I absolutely love that. And also back to that pee analogy, something that especially women, we want to rush everything. So when we go to pee, we never actually allow ourselves to relax and breathe. So there's always that I think it's called the residual pee that's left over at the end because you're
Mm.
not really relaxing on the toilet. And this also comes with the emotions. Sometimes we're just rushing through our day all the time, especially when we quit prioritizing ourselves. And we're not allowing all of that to come out. So there's still this, like Jared just said, the residual lit that's there, which does accumulate over time. I guess something that also fits into this is your identity and how it can keep you stuck. Because as we're going through this process of change, especially when you start a journey with example, the goal of weight loss, or a lot of the time when we start any journey, our goals are never really our own. And what we think we need to do and the process to get there, or what we think is ideal. I guess doctors, I have this extreme distaste for doctors putting this onto a lot of women with the BMI index and this goal weight because I started to ask people, where is this number coming from? Why do you feel like you need to weigh that number? Oh, because the doctor said my BMI, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't make that connection until I started asking the right question. And so we come with these ideals, but we don't allow ourselves to evolve and allow our goals to evolve with us as we grow. And then this, like I previously alluded to, with the whole I'm trying not to be negative, I'm trying not to fall back into that negative mindset. Well, how about understanding that through this process you have grown, through this process your identity, the things that you're doing, the habits you've created have all shifted with you. Can you talk a little bit more about this and how this can actually foster this continuous growth pattern? And if we start to identify as this person we're becoming, it can be like a sword against self sabotage.
I mean, at the end of the day, identity is one of the most important things to touch on. It's why, like, for our clients, is one of the first things that we work on, because at the end of the day, here's the just the straight facts. Those that are listening to this, you're on autopilot 90% of the day. You are, I like, over the age of 30, you're like on autopilot 85 to 90% of the day, which means you are not consciously aware of your actions. You are completely on autopilot. So then the thing is that where identity comes into this, identity is not one of these airy fairy woo woo concepts. It's extremely tactical, because if you think about, like most people listening go, yeah, I self sabotage. So my question is, what do you sabotage to? Like, what are you sabotaging to? And I'm telling you, it's you're sabotaging to your identity and your self image and your belief systems. That's what we sabotage to. It's why you always gain back roughly the same amount of weight, or it's why you always sabotage back to the same rough start point. It's like let's say you weigh around 200 pounds. Let's say you've been around 200 pounds. Well, let's say you lose 20 pounds, and every time you sabotage back to around 200. It's why you don't sabotage back to 250. You sabotage it back to 200 ish, because that's where your identity is at. Or if I always say identity is like your own self-fulfilling prophecy. If your identity is, let's say, a binger, like not just someone who struggles with binge eating, but you go, oh no, I'm a binger. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you go 2 weeks without binge eating? The identity is now threatened, and you're going to go on autopilot and find a reason to subconsciously binge back to your identity. Or it's why a lot of people, their identity is a dieter, because they've dieted their entire life. Well, what happens when you don't have any more weight to lose? Well, dieters, all they know how to do is diet. So you're going to find a way to subconsciously gain the weight back so you can go back on a diet again. This is why you have to be aware of these patterns and programs that run unconsciously, so you can be aware of them and put these action plans into place. But one of the biggest tactics you can do is change your identity, who you actually think you are, because your identity is, the best way I've ever heard it coined is like the thermostat on your wall. So over here, our thermostat in my house is set on, like, let's say 69 degrees Fahrenheit, because I'm one of those. So it's at 69 on my wall. Well, I also have 3 dogs. So if it's pretty warm outside and my dog kicks the door open and the room heats up to 80, my thermostat's going to kick on and go, I'm not supposed to be here. This is not where we're set at. And it will cool the room back off because to where its setting is at. Your life and your results are no different. If your identity is, I've always been the fat person, I've always struggled, I'm a binger, I'm never good enough, I'm not worthy of happiness. Okay. What do you think is going to happen when you lose weight, start to get happy and feel better, but you still view yourself as a fat, unworthy piece of shit? You're going to find a way. Something's going to mysteriously happen like clockwork, and you're going to find a way to gain the weight back. And you're going to go, how did this happen? I was doing so well. It's like I woke up and I'm back to where I started. But that's why because it's the issue is it's the identity. Even if your actions are sustainable, I've seen this happen. I've seen people literally take like great programs by, like, let's say some of my friends that's in their sustainable programs. They're like mild calorie deficit, high protein, strength train 3 days a week. Great. I love it. And they do that for the next couple months and they start to lose a little bit of weight, but they never address their identity. They never address the story they've sold themselves on about how they're not good enough and how they're always going to be fat and how they're never motivated and how they're not good enough. Well, they did this program that was even sustainable, but because the identity wasn't taken care of, they found a way to ruin those results and get back to square one without even realizing it, because that's how identity works. Because you subconsciously sabotage to your lowest identity. So if you don't change your identity and you only focus on the physical things, they will be short-lived.
Raise your floor. Don't just raise your ceiling. Again, this is why the foundation phase is so important, because you can have the best coach in the world, you can have the best program in the world, but without that solid foundation, it's all going to collapse. You could spend $1 million on a mansion, but if you wanted to just get that mansion up and going so you can start living in it, but you skimped on the foundation, do you really think that that's going to hold? Do you really think that when the weather gets rocky, that that's going to hold? You just spent all that money for nothing. You're going to fall back to the lowest level, which is ground, like soil, and then you're going to have to rebuild again. Are you going to skip the foundation that time? No, you're going to make sure that you actually build it up this time. But the thing is, that's if you learn your lesson. But the thing is, now it's going to take even longer when it would have been done like 5-10 years ago when you actually could have made that choice. But onto that, it's most people fail before they even get started because they don't believe in themselves, because they haven't accepted that they need to take on this new identity, and because they try to skip the process. But here's an example. When you're lifting heavier, when you set yourself up for success mentally, because now you're focusing on lifting, focusing on performance, it can have a ripple effect onto your everyday life. And I think you made an Instagram post on this, which is where I got the inspiration from. How lifting and focusing on performance has a ripple effect on everyday life, which then impacts your body image and it gets your physique goals faster. Let's speak more on that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, was that your post or my post?
I think it was yours.
Was it? I was gonna say I don't remember if I were. When was that? When did I post that? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, because it's something I always speak about. So then I saved it. I'm like, this is what I talk about.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the foundation of everything in your life. So when you level up your personal, whether psychological, emotional, whatever you want to call it, side of you, everything else in your life changes, because you take you everywhere. You take you to your work, you take you to your kids, you take you to your partner, you take you to your friendships, you take you everywhere. So when you fix just a little bit of you, let's say you get yourself mentally and emotionally better by 10%. Well, it's no wonder your relationship is better. It's no wonder your friendships are better. It's no wonder you're making more money at work, because you're quite literally the foundation of every single facet of your life, which is why this impacts everything, not just weight loss.
I found it. You shared a post from Sarah Staples. One thing I love about lifting heavy is that you have to start believing you can do hard things, and that has a ripple effect on your everyday life outside of the gym. And this is one of the reasons I also love getting my girls to set up their training sessions, to make that the most important part of what they are doing. Because when you start to challenge how much you can lift, challenge just that one more rep, if you're starting to fail your last rep, quote unquote, and then you try to push one more, if you can get that, how much confidence does that give you? It's like it's like the drug high that doesn't even need drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Sarah's great. I love her content. But it's one of those. It's because you're foundationally changing who you are. It's like, to go back to the house building analogy, it's the foundation affects the bathroom, the living room, the upstairs, the downstairs, the windows, the ceiling. It affects everything, because when the foundation's good, everything's good. But if the foundation's bad, now the roof is fucked. Now the walls are crooked. Now the windows don't fit. Now the doorway's jammed. Now like the walls are cracking. So it affects it. This is bigger than just weight loss. This is why it's good to have these deeper, more intellectual conversations around this, because it makes weight loss seem like just a little bit more surface level, because it is. Not that it's not important, not that it's not a good thing, but we have to go about it the right way. Because if you, again, don't change your metaphorical foundation, your beliefs, your thought processes, your emotional state, your everything, is your weight loss is going to be short-lived. It's just how the game works.
So on negative self-talk, how can negative self-talk prevent you from ever achieving that goal body in life? And how can you start then believing in yourself to create that unshakable proof?
um Negative self-talk is going to affect the relationship you have with yourself. Your relationship you have with yourself is going to affect your actions, and your actions are going to affect the results you're creating and the proof you're generating. So I like to view the relationship someone has with themselves like the relationship with someone else. So let's take my wife, for example. um if I all of a sudden just talked to my wife the way that most people with shitty self-talk talk to themselves, my wife and I probably wouldn't have a great marriage. If I'm like, oh, you're never good enough, oh, I knew you were gonna fail, oh, fuck you, you're such a whatever. Like if I went down the line, like that feels gross even just saying it, even in like describing it right now, like to talk about my wife like that. But if I actually treated her like that, it would hinder our relationship. If I'm like, man, what's wrong with you? You're never good enough. Why are you like this? Why are you always such a failure? Fuck you, man. You're always such a screw up. Well, that sounds an awful that's like when I struggled with self-talk, that's the stuff I'd say to myself, right? But if I talk to my wife that way, well, our marriage is not going to be very happy, because words then have meanings and then beliefs behind them. So if that would hinder the relationship I have with my wife, it will hinder the relationship you have with yourself. And when you have a shitty relationship with yourself, that is a foundational piece of your identity, because you don't treat yourself well. So it's no wonder you don't feel like you're good enough or you're worthy or any of these things. And it also goes a level deeper, where it's no wonder your actions aren't in the right place. And if your actions aren't in the right place, then your results aren't going to be in the right place, and you won't have the irrefutable proof. So it trickles from the top down.
And you can't act in a positive way when you're always being so negative on yourself. I heard this analogy where if you're doing whitewater rafting, for example, and there's like a tree in the way, if you're focusing on the tree and staring intently at the tree, trying to avoid that thing that's about to capsize you, you're going to be stirring your oars and boat towards the tree. So instead, focus on where you want to go. Focus on the direction that leads to the clear path, so then you don't capsize the boat.
Yeah, action, more subconscious stuff. Actions follow focus, right? Like it's why they talk about. I remember the first time I realized this. I was driving my car and I saw an accident happen. So I'm like driving my car, and then like something happened over here, and I went, "Oh, what's that?" I didn't go, "What's that?" I go, "What's that?" And my hands made the steering wheel turn, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And I'm like, I had to make sure I was back in the lines, because actions follow focus every time. So if all we do is look through the lens of lack, if all we do is look through, oh, I have 80 more, I lost 10 pounds, but I've got 50 more to lose, or man, I'm doing okay, but fuck, the scale spiked again. Like if you do that and shit on yourself or should on yourself, your actions are just going to continue to go that way, which is why, again, most people sabotage.
I absolutely loved that last part, because there's like, you need to create undeniable proof and then focus on the person that you want to become. And a question I always ask my girls, for example, is what does strong and empowered mean to you? And most of the time, they don't even have an answer for that, because they never even stopped to thought about the person they want to become and what it actually feels like to be that person. They're too busy focusing on all the things they hate right now. Like, I hate how I feel in my body, how I feel in my clothes, how I feel this. But it's like, okay, cool. But what does the strong and empowered version of you feel like? Because they aren't worrying about how tight their clothes feel or ruminating on the little things that make them feel like shit. Because when you focus on feeling good, you're going to act good. When you focus on fueling yourself to feel good, you're going to make the right choices, because fueling your body with the right quote unquote foods isn't just about fueling your physical self. It's about knowing what emotion, like, I love this part where it's just like, know the intention behind what you are eating. Is that food for physical benefit, or is it to quell an emotional want? And are you going to be okay with that decision? Because food is also an emotional thing, but you need to be intentful with every single choice that you make in that regard. Because if you make it and it's more of a comfort choice versus this is a choice because I am socially eating for my social health. That is okay too because you're a human. But if you're going to, as Jared was alluding to before, if you want to rewind, if you're going to beat yourself up for every single choice that you make and not realize that it's serving you in some way and say, oh, I'm shit because I'm doing this, oh, I just did this, but that's not going to serve that person you want to become, because the person you want to become knows how to choose social events that serve that person they want to be. So I guess this then leads into the whole, where does self-awareness and being solutions focused fit into this? And how does shaming yourself into change prevent you from becoming that goal person, living in that goal body, living in that goal life? And kind of the goal body isn't really about the body itself, but who you become in that process of achieving said thing.
At the end of the day, like shaming someone into something never works. Like it's proven by psychology and behavior, like in behavior changing, like with children. Like shaming a child into doing something is not how we create lifelong change that sticks and creates permanent results that last for years. So if it wouldn't work for in that context, it's not going to work for you. It's so short lived. You can get some shit to happen out at first with shame, but that's not what we're in the business of. One, it's causes more problems after that, but then it's one of those things where it's an unsustainable avenue. Because again, you're not going to get these positive, permanent, life altering, amazing results in this amazing life with debilitatingly negative and shitty avenues like shaming yourself or beating yourself up, or things like that. So doesn't work for kids. It's proven in psychology. It's not a good way to do it. And it also just sucks because if you can't enjoy the journey, you're not going to enjoy the destination. So if you're shaming yourself into action, it's going to just make things worse and you're going to lose all your results because it's impossible to enjoy the day-to-day of this game, which is where all the time is spent. Like we all know, this is not a fast process. So if you're going to be on the journey for years, and then once you get to the results, you're going to have to keep doing the same shit you've done for years. If your biggest asset is shame, you're not going to get these results. They're going to be short-lived. You're going to get them for like 4 seconds and then you're going to sabotage and they're going to leave you.
What about when there's such a strong blind spot that we don't even realize what our quote unquote problem is?
What do you mean by that?
So a lot of the time we aren't even aware of what the problem is. We only focus on the symptoms, and because we're so focused on the symptoms, like I have a headache, I'm feeling tired, this keeps happening, but we aren't bringing, I guess the main question I want to ask here is sabotage as well, through fear of what if I actually succeed, and then not realizing that there's going to be so many more, like they feel like there's going to be so much more to change to become this new person, and then my whole life needs to do this because we're so focused on, okay, this is the person I want to become. I'm scared of getting there because as soon as I get there, then who do I actually have to keep being to stay there? So then we self-sabotage because of that fear of succeeding in such a sense.
So I actually believe the other way. I don't think anyone's scared of success personally. And here I'll explain why. I don't think anyone's, if we were truly scared of success, consciously scared of success, I should say, we would never set these goals to begin with. If I was scared of becoming successful in business, or if I was like, I wouldn't set the goal. If I'm, you know what I mean? If I didn't, like, if someone was scared of losing weight, they would never even set out to lose the weight. It's why, like, I don't want to go skydiving. I am like, the thought of getting in a plane and jumping out sounds like a terrible idea. So guess what? I never made the appointment to go up and skydive. So I'm not convinced people are scared to succeed. I think people, from a psychological standpoint, subconsciously gravitate to what's most familiar, which is struggle and failure. So that's why people go, that's why they start over every Monday. It's why they start all the diets, because consciously they're not scared. Consciously they're like, I hate the way I look and feel. I'm going to do this plan because I think it might help me not be so fat. Like that's what most people's minds are. But the thing is, once they start losing the weight, it's now it goes away from the old identity, right? If the identity is I'm fat, and then they start losing weight, that's in opposition of the identity. So that's when they sabotage. So consciously, I don't think anyone's scared of success. I don't think anyone's scared of succeeding. I think we gravitate subconsciously to the old familiar because it's all we know, and your brain only cares about self-preservation and not happiness. So your old familiar may be suffering in a terrible situation, but at least it's familiar. So your brain wants you to stay there where it can keep you from dying. So no one's scared of success. Subconsciously, we are just attracted to what we're most used to, which is failure.
So how can you upgrade that familiar?
Say that again.
How can you upgrade that familiar?
One, you have to become aware that that's your pattern and that's how this game goes. So that's why we are not surprised when sabotage tries to set in. But then you have to create a new familiar, which means you have to create new results and stay there. That's how we create the new familiar. Case in point, all three of my dogs are rescues, right? Like we didn't get them from like a breeder or whatever. Two of my dogs, my two girls, had like shitty fucking owners, okay, because people suck. Well, when we first brought my dogs home, my two girls home, they like their old owners were abusive, right? So my dogs, you'd go to pet them and they would like wince because they thought you were going to hit them. Because the reason they reacted like that is because that was from their old familiar. Old owner used to hit me, so I had to brace myself. Well, they don't know new owner isn't going to hit them. So, but after being in my house for a while, they realize they get head pats and treats and cuddles on the couch. But it took them a minute to realize the new familiar of like, oh, I guess I'm not going to get hit anymore. So this is why we have to understand from a neural pathway standpoint what happens. So think of it this way: neural pathways in the brain work very similar to like trails in the woods, right? If you go on like a hiking trail and you're on a trail, it's carved out. Like there's all the woods and grass and trees, but a trail is a trail because someone forged it. And now everyone walks on it and it keeps it clear. Well, that's the old familiar. So of course it's easier to go that way. You subconsciously want to go on the path that's carved out that everyone else has gone down or you've always gone down. When you're creating a new familiar, you are going that way and forging your own path that no one's been down. When you're like, okay, I got to create the new familiar. You have this path that you've gone down a million times, so it's perfect, it's clear, it's safe, it's carved out. Or you can go make your own path. Well, that's kind of scary. Well, there's no path there already, but you're going to go down that path. You're going to create your own path, which is the new familiar. But then once you have now more reps and experience and days there, now all of a sudden that path is going to look like the new familiar, and the old familiar is going to start getting brush grown on it and weeds. And now it's not going to look like the old familiar anymore. So that's literally it. Is you got to go realize that's the old familiar. That's the pathway to suffering. I've got to create this new familiar. So that's why you're doing the right things. You're saying, who do I have to become? Identity. Who do I have to become that gets what I want? Then show up in your actions until you have that new path, until you have the proof and the evidence that you are who you say you are. But it's going to take a lot of awareness and a lot of not going on autopilot so you don't sabotage back and go down the old path.
Absolutely love that. And I would add, celebrate your wins. You need to celebrate them as much as you can, because without that, you aren't allowing yourself to start to identify with that new person you're creating. You need to allow yourself to pause and slow down instead of just being someone to set the next goal, set the next target, check the next box, because then we just become a human checker instead of a human doing. I call it the human checker because we're always trying to set up check boxes to check up. I guess the last thing I really want to end this on is how having a lack of boundaries and being a people pleaser can hold you back, because I feel like that can be something we don't realize that we do, especially women who are trying to do everything for everyone. And it ties a perfect bow on this conversation.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's really simple. You can't pour from an empty cup. Literally, that's it. Like if you're a people naturally have people pleasing tendencies, and you're one who will take the shirt off your back for someone else, is always there for other people, but you'll give yourself some if there's some left at the end of the day. The problem is you'll eventually not be able to help others. That's my biggest thing with trying to help other people who have a really hard time pouring into themselves, is we do it for the nature of the other people. If you run yourself ragged, you get burned out, and you put yourself on the back burner, you're only going to last for a very short period of time, and you're giving 1% to those that you love. Versus if you are selfish, now you earn the right to be selfless. Now you have all the energy and mental bandwidth and capacity to pour into others. So like just reframe it for those that are listening that are people pleasers and struggle with this. Put it through the lens of, wow, logically speaking, I cannot help others unless I'm good. If my house is not good enough, I can't have people over. If you know, as a weird analogy, if I'm not mentally okay, I can't help others become mentally okay. If I'm not my best self, how can I help others be their best selves? If I feel like shit, look like shit, and stressed beyond belief and can't stand my relationship I have with myself, how the fuck are you going to help others? Let's say you do though. Well, then that's like 1% though. Imagine what you would be able to help others with if you were at like 100%. It's almost like money. If you're broke, let's say you can barely pay your own bills, you don't have any money to give others. If your mom needed help or your sister needed help or your friends needed help, you don't got any. $20 isn't going to help anyone. But imagine if you're a baller. Imagine if you're like Jeff Bezos or fucking Elon Musk. Well, you could literally drop like a couple $1,000,000 and wouldn't even realize it's gone because they have excess to give, right? But if you're broke and just poor, you don't have extra to give to other people, or the little bit you do give, it's not going to help that much. It's no different with your own bandwidth. It's no different than your emotional self. It's no different than your happiness, which is why you have to be selfish, because now that gives you the right to be selfless and have enough to give.
That is probably the most important point when you're starting, because when things get busy, if you're someone that always defaults to being a people pleaser or someone that gives to others, you're going to let your cup run empty and your battery run dry.
Mm-hmm.
Your cup run dry and your battery run empty. So I guess with that, is there anything else that you want to sum up on and tie a bow with that can be really important for many people listening to this who are stuck in the roller cycle of weight loss?
Pick one or two things we talked about and actually apply it. Do not be one of those people who listen to podcasts like this, or like mine or these other shows and people that you listen to, and just be a consumer. It feels good to listen to stuff like this. It can be kind of inspiring. You can be like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But when you close this app out and go back to your normal life and you don't change anything, then it was wasted. My thing is like, I don't care about how motivational stuff can sound. I want you to execute and show up for yourself. And we've talked about a lot. We've talked about like a dozen different things here, but I want you to pick only one little nugget, like one nugget that you're like, ooh, I can do that, and do it for the next like 5 months. And then report back and be like, yo, I did that one thing that you and Jared talked about. I'm like, fuck, my life changed. Well, that's awesome. But pick one thing and execute. All this stuff sounds great and it's philosophical and it sounds kind of stoic, and you're like, yeah, but we need it to be tactical. This is why, like, I'm a big fan of what I've called philosophically tactical. Take these more philosophical, these bigger feel good points, but then apply them to your life. Actually rewrite your identity. Actually prioritize yourself first. Actually give yourself the grace and patience and to take this as long as you need it to take, and to do it the right way and fix your foundation. Like all the things. Pick one and just show up ruthlessly for the next 5 or 6 months and see what happens.
Absolutely love that. Apply, don't just consume. So with that, Dieting from the Inside Out podcast is where you'll find Jared, and on Instagram at Real Jared Hamilton. Is there anywhere else that you would like to plug?
That's it. I mean, everywhere else is pretty solid. You can find everything else if you go to those two. So we're good.
Perfect. So with that, thank you so much for coming on. And if you enjoyed this, please tag us. Please send us a message. Shoot Jared a message. He's really friendly. He responds and he will get back to you. So will I. And with that, you will hear me on the next episode. And don't forget to give this a 5-star rating on where you get your podcasts from. Thank you.